I'd like to first wish everyone a happy and safe 4th of July weekend, and I thank you for watching. Back in the 1970s, social clubs were a common sight in many neighborhoods throughout New York City. These clubhouses were mostly for members only. In fact, most clubs would display a plaque making the public aware of that rule. The clubs were places for men to gather and socialize. The Ravenite Social Club at 247 Mulberry Street was no different, with the exception of that particular club was a gathering place for the Gambino family. And it was during the 70s that the Ravenite served as headquarters for Aniello Dellacroce, the Gambino family's underboss. The Ravenite was Dellacroce's office, not only where he conducted business, but it was his inner sanctum, a place where members and a few privileged associates would meet. More importantly, it was a safe haven, not only for the respect shown to Dellacroce, but the Ravenite represented Gambino property. And it was a known fact that any act of disrespect, whether inside or outside the club, would have serious consequences, which leads us to the following story. As far as Gambino history, Dellacroce is someone who represents an extremely powerful force behind the family. It was no secret that the entire family was in favor of Dellacroce taking the reins from Carlo Gambino as opposed to Paul Castellano. But for Dellacroce, it didn't matter. He knew the respect he had and confidently accepted the number 2 position. If Castellano represented the face of the family, Dellacroce represented the family's power. Shockingly, an article dated December 16, 1985, in Time magazine, titled The Double Life of a Don, named Dellacroce as being an FBI informant. The article claims that Dellacroce offered the FBI a wealth of information regarding crimes committed by his enemies and the commission. It goes on to say an FBI agent by the name of Patrick Collins claimed he waltzed into the Ravenite, sat down with Dellacroce, and they developed a working relationship. Before I explain why I think this accusation is pure bullshit, let me speak of an actual run-in that Agent Collins had back in 1966. On September 30th, 1966, on a ramp outside the New Orleans International Airport, New Orleans boss Carlos Marcello and his son were being harassed by photographers and news reporters. While this was taking place, he got into a confrontation with Agent Collins and threw a punch at the agent. Marcello eventually was convicted for the assault and served 6 months of a 2-year sentence. So we're talking about an agent with an axe to grind. It's highly probable Agent Collins falsely labeled Dellacroce after having a run-in with him as well. Personally, I don't believe for a second Dellacroce was an informant. 2 of the guys that were regulars at the Ravenite were brothers Carmine and Frank Consalvo. Reports have Carmine Consalvo as being a member of the Gambino family, and his brother Frank an associate who was Dellacroce's driver. In the summer of 1972, Carmine Consalvo had some kind of beef with a street guy named Carlo Lombardi. I don't have a definitive idea what their beef was about. However, there were indications that it involved narcotics, and an argument turned into a fight between Lombardi and Consalvo in a restaurant called Pemble's. Nevertheless, Lombardi decided to confront Carmine Consalvo in the one place he knew he could find him, at the Ravenite. On August 1st, 1972, Lombardi walked into the social club, obviously looking for Carmine Consalvo, who happened to be there, and he pulled out a pistol and fired 4 times. All of the shots were wild and hit no one, including Dellacroce, who was also in his club that day. If you think about it, it was a suicide mission, whether Lombardi knew it at the time or not. He stormed into a Gambino social club, throwing shots in the place. The guys in the club wrestled the pistol from him and gave him a beating, but he managed to get away with his life, and supposedly someone in the club yelled out to him, "You'll be dead in a week." His girlfriend, Elizabeth Bryces, met him at the Beekman Downtown Hospital, where he was being treated for a deep cut above his right eye. Also there was his lifelong friend, Nicholas Nicky Nut Musolino. After leaving the hospital, Lombardi, Bryces, and Musolino drove to Musolino's bungalow, located at Levine's Bungalow Colony in the Catskill Mountains. While at the bungalow, Lombardi and Musolino practiced shooting a machine gun outside, and Lombardi told Musolino he was going to get Carmine Consalvo. 2 days later, Lombardi and Bryces left the bungalow and went back into Manhattan and checked into the Holiday Inn under false names. Now, after the incident like that took place at the Ravenite, they were definitely on high alert, especially since Lombardi got away. Naturally, they would have people out looking for him on the street. They knew this guy's elevator didn't go to the top floor, so they had to be careful and prepared. But to be honest, they weren't that careful. A week later, on August 8, 1972, Lombardi entered the Ravenite again. This time, he brings the machine gun and pointed it at everyone in the club, including Dellacroce. He went to fire it, but it jammed, and then he bolted out of the club, once again with his life intact. He jumped into a car that was driven by Mussolino. Lombardi was a native of Brooklyn and was no stranger to violence. He'd been arrested numerous times for crimes dating back to 1961, including homicide, and also been questioned by the police for 2 murders. He was also known to be heavily involved in the narcotics business. Following the second attempt at the Ravenite, Lombardi and Mussolino drove back to the Holiday Inn and met with Peter Sonny Salinati and 2 other guys. Someone suggested it wasn't safe for them to be in Manhattan, so they drove to Secaucus, New Jersey, and got a motel room. That night at the motel, Salinati said he'd seen a guy in the hallway who looked familiar. Lombardi took the machine gun out and was standing near the door. Salinati told them it wasn't safe for them to remain there and suggested they go back up to Mussolino's bungalow until things cooled off. Lombardi foolishly put his trust in street guys. At the time, it's believed Mussolino was a member of the Bonanno family, and since both Mussolino and Salinati was from Manhattan, they without a doubt knew Dellacroce and who he was. After leaving the motel in Secaucus, they got into a beige convertible driven by Mussolino. Salinati sat in the passenger seat, and Brices and Lombardi sat in the back. Earlier, back in the motel, when Mussolino and Salinati entered the room, they lifted their shirts to show Lombardi that they had no weapons. At that point, Lombardo gave Mussolino a gun to hold. In the backseat of the convertible, Lombardi had the machine gun in the pillowcase on the floor near his feet. As they were driving, Salinati said he wanted to stop for cigarettes in Monticello. Mussolino pulled off the main highway and onto Route 17 in Thompson. Salinati told him, "You made the wrong turn, moron," and Mussolino turned the car around and headed in the opposite direction. According to Brices, at some point, both men turned around with guns. Several shots were fired at Lombardi, who was hit in the head and killed. She explained everything happened fast. She put her hands over her face and put her head down, and was shot in the neck, but was still alive and played dead. They pulled both her and Lombardi out of the car and ultimately dumped them in a ditch on the side of the road. After they pulled away, Brices got up and walked up to the road. A truck driver spotted her and called the police, who took her to the hospital. The police discovered Lombardi had been wearing tailored dress pants and had large sums of money in his pockets. I want to just mention the super thanks icon beneath this video for anyone who wants to support the channel. Thank you. A month later, in October, Salinati and Mussolino were indicted for Lombardi's murder and the attempted murder of Elizabeth Brices. Arrest warrants were issued, and Mussolino was arrested months later, but Salinati remained a fugitive. During his trial, Mussolino admitted to certain things. He said that both he and Salinati called Lombardi at the hotel in New Jersey to let him know that they would be coming over. When they knocked on the door, Lombardi answered it with a pistol in his hand, so they lifted their shirts to show him that they were unarmed. At some point, Salinati spotted a guy by the name of Joe Black in the hallway of the motel. Joe Black was connected to Carmine Consalvo. He said when they told Lombardi this, he got crazy and got his machine gun from under a mattress and headed to the door. He told them, "I gotta kill this guy. He's gonna tell Carmine I'm here." They were able to calm him down and told him that the guy was probably meeting a girl there. They convinced Lombardi to go back up to the bungalow upstate. Mussolino said that in the car, Lombardi had a pistol in his waistband and a machine gun in a pillowcase near his feet. According to Mussolino, both he and Salinati were still unarmed. He went on to say, at some point, Salinati wanted to stop for a bagel and cigarettes, and he made the wrong turn off the road, but turned the car around and was driving down the road, and he heard Lombardo tell Salinati, "I'm going to kill you, Sonny." He turned around and seen Lombardo bending down to get the machine gun, and Salinati grabbed Lombardi's pistol, and he heard 2 shots fired. The jury wasn't too convinced with Mussolino's version, and they convicted him, and he received a 25 to life sentence. Peter Salinati was arrested years later on July 29, 1977, after a high-speed chase in Atlantic City that ended with FBI agents ramming his car. At the time, Salinati wasn't only a fugitive on this case, but he was also indicted on a major narcotics case that took place in the mid-70s. The FBI described him as a member of organized crime. He may have also been with the Bonannos like Mussolino. Strangely enough, I wasn't able to find out what the outcome for Salinati was and if he received a sentence on the Lombardi murder. However, the Consalvo brothers' story didn't end well. Both brothers were in the narcotics business, and as I mentioned, it's possible the beef with Lombardi was over drugs. A few years after Lombardi was killed, on September 7, 1975, Carmine Consalvo was tossed 24 stories to his death in Fort Lee, New Jersey. He was awaiting trial in a narcotics case involving $30 million. It was no secret that he was a narcotics dealer who even did business with Gambino member Eddie Lino, who was also known to be involved in the drug business. Not long after Carmine Consalvo's murder, his brother Frank began talking about avenging his death. And on December 4th, 1975, he too was tossed 5 stories to his death in Little Italy. Following both brothers' deaths, they became commonly referred to on the street as the Flying Consalvos.